Hello and welcome. In this video, we will see what is an exception filter first, and then we will see another topics like the filter scopes, the filter types and execution order, how it works, the exception filters, how we can implement exception filters, and finally we will do the implementation and do some tests. Our code is never exception free and we need a way to handle exceptions, okay? This is the why we need exception filters. And what it is actually something like an action filter, but for exceptions, and it will just run when an exception occurs. This is very similar to action filters, and we can apply these filters to action level, the individual actions, then at controller level, all actions of a controller will have the filter, and finally at a global level, so all the actions of your web API will have the filter. Like I explained in the previous video about order action filters, we have a request, then we have the authorization and authentication filter that will run. After that we have the action filters before and after, and here this is our action. Finally we have a response, okay? If something happens here, if we have here exception, our exception filter will run, okay? Also about the scopes, the global, controller and action. For action filters before, the order is this. The first ones are the global, then the controller, then the action level, and for the action filters after is the reversed order. For exception filters is the same as the action filter after. So the filters that are more specific, the action will be the first, then the controller level, and finally the filters that are applied at global level, okay? And is start the task, okay? Here in the action, they are a little different from action filters. They will catch all unhandled errors from actions. Also, they will catch errors from action filters. They will not catch authorization and authentication filter errors. They will not catch these. Here is where things go a little different. Instead of our actions being invoked directly, our actions that are guarded by exception filters will be wrapped into something that is called exception filter result, and this is actually a special implementation of HTTP action result. What will happen? This exception filter result will run our actions and will capture all the exceptions. Then it will pass the captured exceptions to the appropriate exception filter. Let's see this in a more detailed way, okay? This is the implementation of exception filter result. This is from Microsoft and is at GitHub. I will provide the link in the description of this video. As you can see, this exception filter result implements HTTP action result. Also, it has a HTTP action context. It has a exception filter array that is our filters, and also it has a HTTP action result that is our action. This inner result is our action. If we go down, we can find a method called execute async, and inside of this method we can find a try where our action is executed, and then we have a catch. If it catches exception, it will get the information of that exception into this exception info, okay? After this, it will do some work like checking if the action was actually cancelled by us. If we go down, we can find here a for loop over the filters, and it will do the for loop in the reversed way. Why? Because specific filters, like the ones that are applied at action level, will execute before less specific ones, like the global filters, the ones that are applied at global level. Then it will get the filter and get here to the exception filter and execute exception filter async. These will run the methods of our exception filter. Okay, after this it will do some other work, and if the response of our action context is different from null, it will return like nothing happens. Okay, if not, it will throw the exception. Okay, if our action filter doesn't handle the exception, our exception will be thrown again. How can we implement our exception filters? This is like action filters. We have two options, and the first one is extending filter attribute and also implementing iExceptionFilter. The second option is more simple, is just extending exception filter attribute class. Okay, so the first option make us to implement execute exception filter async, this method. The second option provide us a way to implement on exception async or on exception. Okay, this first method is actually the same thing as this method. Okay, so in this video I will implement this option with this method and this option with the on exception, not the on exception async, because the method is actually the same thing as the first one here. Okay, here in Hello project I already have this exception filters controller. This is a simple controller with three action methods. The first one is the get, throws a end of world exception. The second one is the get2, that throws again the end of world exception. And the third one is the get no exceptions, is a normal method. Okay, the end of world exception is just a simple exception without any special implementation. Here in the option 1 and option 2 is where we will do our code. So let's start here at option 1, and we say that we have a public class that is called myExceptionFilter. It extends filter attribute, and for this we need to import system.web.http.filters. Also we need to implement iExceptionFilter. This iExceptionFilter makes us implement execute exception filter async. Here in this method we will implement the behavior of our filter. Okay, we need to return a task, and the task needs an action. Okay, so first we declare a action. Action is equals to a lambda expression. I will complete this. Then we declare a task. Var task is equals to a new task, and we provide the action to this task. Also, we want to return the task. There is a step that usually people forget, and is start the task. Okay, here in the action what we will do, the first thing that we need to do is, let me check here, we have a HTTP action executed context that is called action executed context. Let's call this just context. Okay, we don't want here complex names, and here we say that if the context dot exception is a end of world exception, we want to do something. Let's get the name of the action. So var action name is equals to context dot action context dot action descriptor dot action name. So with this code we have the name of the action. Okay, after this we can declare here a message, msg is equals to $myExceptionFilter, and we say the name of the action just like this. Let's remove this name. Then we say that we want to trace, and we need, for this, we need to import system diagnostics. We want to trace to appear here in the output window. Okay, we say write line, and we provide the message. After this, we can say that the context.response is equals to context.request.create error response. and we provide the HTTP status code. We need to import system.net internal server error, and we pass the message. Let's put this in the next line so we can see everything. We have here an error because Visual Studio was not smart enough to ask for importing the system.net.http, this thing, okay? So with this, everything is okay. This is the first option. Now we do the implementation of the option number 2. Okay, so we go here and we say that we have a public class that is called myExceptionFilter2, and it will extend ExceptionFilter attribute. Now we want to override a void method called onException. Okay, just this. Since the implementation will be exactly the same thing, we can go to the first one and copy the if statement and its body. Okay, just copy this and we go here and we paste. We need to rename the HTTP action executed context to be just context. Okay, and also we need to know that this is the myExceptionFilter2. Okay, is just this. Now we are ready to apply these action filters. Let's minimize these and minimize these. Let's copy the name of these. We go here to the first action method and we say that we have this myExceptionFilter here to this get method, and here we have the myExceptionFilter2. Okay, and now we can run these to test. We go to Postman and we send a request and we got this response. Okay, myExceptionFilter action get. We can say to get 2 and we send the request again and we get the myExceptionFilter2 action get 2. We have applied the filters at action level. Okay, we can apply the filters also at controller level. I will not do that. And at global level, we go to the configuration folder, my configuration. We go down and in the filters, we say that we want to config, filters, add, and what we will add, a new myExceptionFilter2. We can run these and go again to Postman, change the request to be just to the action method get, not the action method get2. We send the request and we got the myExceptionFilter2 action get. Okay, so what happened here? We have in the action method get the filter myExceptionFilter, but we also have this at global level, myExceptionFilter2. So the first one that run was this myExceptionFilter, and then the second one will run, okay, the action, controller, and then global level filters. But imagine that you, for some reason, want to consider that the first exception filter that runs makes things okay and you don't want the global filter to run and change the things. So a simple way to do is in your definition of your exception filter, verify if the context.response is different from null, like Microsoft do in their code, okay? Now let's do another test. For example, we will call these getNoException, this action method that don't have any exception, and we go to the action filter controllers. If we go here to the configurations, you see that we have at global level myActionFilter2. So any action will call this myActionFilter2. If we go here to action filters and myActionFilter2 on action executing, we can say here that it throws a new end of the world exception. We run this and go to Postman. We change this to get no exceptions and we send our request and we got the response myExceptionFilter2 action get no exceptions. Okay, so if action filter throws exception, this global filter will catch the exception. Okay, Let's do a final test. Here in my exception filter, let's make this my exception filter throws exception. Let's see if the global filter can catch this. We go to the definition of these, and here we say that this will throw a new end of the world exception. We run these. In Postman we will call the action method get. We send a request and this exception was not handled. We have a very ugly error here. So what we learned here is exceptions that are not from action methods or action filters will not be catched. And what we learned with the implementation and with tests is that exception filters only catch exceptions from our actions and action filters. They will not catch exceptions from other exception filters, for example, or from a controller or from a route. In the next video we will investigate how we can catch exceptions in a truly global way. This is the end, and as always you can download the source code. The link is in the description. Give it a like and thanks for watching.